What's up, everybody? Welcome to the What is Crypto podcast with your boy, Nye. I apologize about the audio quality today. I'm on my mobile device because I'm moving houses, and I'll be doing that for the next couple of weeks. So this is what you're going to get. I apologize. But that doesn't mean that the quality of the content is going to change at all. Today we have Richard Ma, and he's going to tell you about smart contracts. You know what? To be honest with you, I have a beef with smart contracts because I don't really think they're all that smart. I think they're not named properly. They should be called something like the kind of smart contracts. Anyway, what is a smart contract? What are they good for? How are they going to be used in daily life in the future? Are they used right now? But before we get into that conversation, don't forget to check us out at whatiscrypto.com. There you can check out our social medias, our Twitter, our Facebook page. Jump in the Facebook page. By the way, Bitcoin is again above 10,000. People think it's not going to slow down until we see all-time highs again, maybe a couple pullbacks, but this is the time that you want to tell all your friends and family to start learning about this digital asset before they see $20,000 Bitcoin or $30,000 Bitcoin. Start FOMOing and start buying at the top. So get everybody listening to the What is Crypto podcast. You can find us on SoundCloud, on Stitcher, on Castbox, and of course on Apple Podcasts. Now, here's Richard Ma and your boy Nye.
Richard, I'm glad to have you on the show today. Can we start by you sharing your full name and title with us, please?
I'm Richard Ma, CEO of QuantStamp.
How would you describe yourself?
I'm CEO of QuantStamp, which is a blockchain security company. Since we started 2.5 years ago, we've secured over 100 different companies and over $1 billion worth of value. So our goal is to provide security to the future of money.
So let's dive into the meat of the conversation here, where we're talking about smart contracts. But before we get into all of that, can you help us define trust?
Sure. Trust is the belief in the reliability of a person or a group. So basically, we need trust because unless you're like a hermit, we're all not self-reliant. So we have to work with other people and organizations every day, and having a belief that they're reliable is very essential to this. So for example, if you want to get lunch at a restaurant, the restaurant actually extends you credit while you have your meal, right? So trust that the restaurant is going to make you food that's safe, and then the restaurant trusts you not to run away before you've paid for your food. So without trust, even really simple interactions like this become more difficult and have a lot of friction.
And how does trust integrate into society?
I think trust is very essential for almost our interactions with other people and organizations. We trust stores not to cheat us. We trust banks not to steal from us. We trust doctors to treat us properly, and so on. And also trust, it's increasingly being monetized. So for example, companies like Uber and Airbnb, they have business models that revolve around trust, right? So when you give your rating, that's kind of a rating of how reliable the Uber driver or the Airbnb hosts are. So increasingly in the digital society, trust is being integrated into kind of a reputation score.
Nice. I like that definition. What I'm trying to do right now is I'm trying to break down smart contracts for people, right? So we've got trust on one end and we got contracts on the other. So before we get into diving into the technology of smart contracts, can you help me define what a contract is now?
So usually traditional legal contracts are written when there's a gap in trust. So for example, if you don't know how reliable your counterparty is, then you want to write a contract with them to make sure that they're going to do what they say they're going to do. So when you go and take out a mortgage, the contract makes sure that you're going to pay back the interest on the mortgage and eventually, the balance of the principal. And these contracts are enforced through legal repercussions, so through the courts. So that's a traditional contract.
And how does a traditional contract mitigate trust? How do they work together?
So traditional contract, they use economic and different incentives to enforce behaviors from the actors and perhaps other types of incentive, right? Going to jail, for example. So if you don't pay your credit card, first there's economic incentives or disincentives, right? You have to pay late fees and maybe your credit score will go down. And whenever you enter into these agreements, there's kind of an expected outcome if you don't deliver on your end of the bargain. And then also, I think within traditional contracts, there's also centuries old social systems that have trust built into them. So there's kind of like a social contract, right? If I'm your friend, then that means certain things I'm obligated to do for you. It's the same thing with a marriage. So if you're married to someone, certain rules follow as well. So I think these things, they've been institutionalized. And then whenever we make fresh contracts, the whole legal profession exists to figure out these incentives and disincentives to make sure that you can enforce them.
This question, how do you use crypto in your daily life, is sponsored by BMag. BMag.io. BMag, they write stories that inform, influence, and inspire the global blockchain cryptocurrency community.
I use crypto in my daily life to pay friends. For example, to settle a friendly game of poker using a stablecoin like DAI. It's easier than trying to split up cash. I also use it to earn interest using Compound. In the future, I think crypto can be tied into your regular credit cards. I also think that in the future, people will use stablecoins like a savings account to earn interest on their savings and can directly spend it without converting it to US dollars. Overall, I think in the future, crypto will enable more globally accessible and stable savings options for billions of people.
And now, back to Michael and his guest. Enjoy the rest of the show.
So now that we've broken down what trust is, we've broken down what a traditional contract looks like and how it functions, we're moving into an era where there's a potential to have a whole new form of contracts known as smart contracts. So for someone who is just starting to learn about cryptocurrency, blockchain, etc., what is a smart contract?
A smart contract is a piece of software that manipulates money instead of data. So basically, a lot of legal contracts, they involve money, especially relating to commerce. And so this piece of software, it can allow you to write contracts that are fully automated. And the trust model that smart contracts uses, instead of having a trusted third party like a court, it just uses the trust model of decentralization. So essentially, when you write your agreement, there's a lot of different global network of actors that enforces that agreement instead of you needing to go to a court to enforce your agreement.
And how does something like that work, right? Because from a beginner's perspective, how could something like this be enforced? Someone who's coming in and is just learning about smart contracts might not understand the way that the enforcement works and how it can function on such a broad scale, like from people around the world.
So for example, if you deposit your money into a savings account, the bank will give you, let's say, like 1% interest a year. And when you make the savings account, you make a contract with the bank and they say, okay, like we're going to, on the best efforts basis, give you a monthly interest. So equivalent for a smart contract is that you take your digital currency and you put it into like a digital savings account, and it has all the rules written into it that it's going to give you 1% interest. So instead of just trusting what the bank says, you can actually go and take a look at the rules and confirm for yourself that, yes, it's going to give you 1% interest. So that's the key difference, where the program is just does exactly what it's written to do, and you can basically confirm that it's going to do this.
And why is this better than our current form of contracts that we have set up in the world today?
So currently, when you think about traditional contracts, there's a lot of situations where maybe you can't rely on this third party. For example, if you're making like a small value transaction, let's say you buy something over the internet and it's $10, it's not really justified to use the court system to get your $10 back, right? Because hiring a lawyer would be a lot more expensive. Also, like in countries where there's corruption, for example, with land titles or bank deposits, you might not want to be able to trust, a centralized system because they might not be neutral and honor the agreements. So these are some instances where it might be better to use a smart contract. The other major reason is that for global commerce, where there's international law, it could be really costly for individuals to have to deal with law in a different country. So instead of doing that, if you can just rely on math, on like a coded set of rules, then you don't need to default back into the traditional legal system. So that, I think those are kind of the benefits for when people use smart contracts in the future.
So we're essentially moving from a world where we trust humans one-on-one to trusting these contracts based in code. On the playing the devil's advocate side of the game, is there any situation here where the code could be faulty or that we shouldn't be trusting the code?
So I think currently in the development of smart contracts, there's hundreds of companies that are building use cases. And a common problem is the security or making sure that these smart contracts are safe to use. And I think that's one of our main missions. And over time, it'll become easier for people to verify that these smart contracts are safe to use and that there's no loopholes. And I think it'll happen over time because it's a relatively new technology, but there's already a lot of advancements that are made into it. And another thing is that I think for projects that have been used for a long time, a lot of people have checked them over. And so, once there's more value at risk and more usage, it's likely that they're going to be safer as well. So that's the trade-offs with using smart contracts. And you can think about it in terms of comparing to traditional contracts. If you just meet a brand new person on the internet, it's also hard to trust that they're going to do what they say as well, right? Whether that's like selling you an item or something like that. So the same kind of analogy does apply to traditional contracts as well.
And what part of society do you envision these smart contracts will affect the most in the future?
I think banking is a really ripe use case for smart contracts. So Compound Finance is an app that today you can get an interest-bearing account that pays a lot more than traditional bank accounts. And it's also, you own your own account. And we see a lot of other use cases in that kind of space in the banking space where you can basically accrue interest, get insurance, and lend to others as well, just over internet. So I think that's going to be an applicable use case immediately. I think over time, it's also going to be used for charitable giving and also for reducing fraud. So we've done some work with different charitable organizations because it turns out when you give donations internationally, there's a lot of different barriers to sending it to the final recipients. And also for different government projects, it turns out that the lack of transparency makes it liable to having corruption. So I think, whenever there's a use case where you can basically see all the contracts in a public forum, just shining a light on that, those will be really good use cases. Yeah.
I love it, man. I love it. Well, I appreciate you coming on the show today to talk with us a little bit about these smart contracts. I appreciate it.
Yeah, thank you.
Thank you for listening to the What is Crypto podcast with your boy Nye. Richard, thank you very much for coming on the show. QuantStamp has always been good to me, good to us. Thank you guys. For your DYOR today, do your own research. I want you to watch the movie. And you know what? Actually, there's only one part that I'm thinking about. The movie's called Elysium with Matt Damon. And the part is, there's actually two parts. The first part is where he has a conversation with a robot police officer. And the second part is when he has a conversation with a robot parole officer. Both times, I feel, represent what a smart contract could look like in daily life. When you're interacting with a person, very robotic, no leeway, no gray area, no understanding, just this is this. If this happens, then this. If you get out of line, then punishment. And that worries me. It worries me that we could possibly be governed by smart contracts, just robots, just programming, just if this happens, then this. People are totally removed. People and more getting removed. Or companies are treating people like robots and making them follow certain procedures that have no gray area. And I think that sucks. Smart contracts, I think, have their place, but in the human world where we have interactions between people and there's a lot of different situations and circumstances, smart contracts, I don't know if they fit. But anyway, that's what smart contracts are. Check out that movie, Elysium. Check out those two parts I'm talking about, and you can see how robotic a smart contract could be, because that's exactly how I think they'll be programmed into our AI, our robots, and, well, tech in the future. Thank you for listening to the What is Crypto podcast with your boy, Nye.